Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. We got a big show today, guys. The Israeli and US strikes on the Iranian terror state's nuclear weapons program has done a fantastic job of exposing how many people on the Canadian political left are not actually pro-Canada, they're just anti-American. And in some cases, they're anti-West in general. These people pretend that all their political stances come from a place of love for Canada, wanting to do the best thing for Canada as a country. No, a lot of these people just like doing the opposite of the Americans. And I am going to tour you through their responses today, not so we can learn anything, but more so we can just point and laugh because I don't think there is anything to learn from these people. They don't know anything. We get to at least just see how little they truly know. But before I get into it, guys, I just want to remind you, if you like my show, make sure to leave a like on this video. If you are not yet a subscriber to the channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button. I am trying to get to 100,000 subscribers by mid-December of this year, or I owe all my friends dinner. It was a very stupid bet I made, but I've made it, and now I'm trying to achieve that goal before I get to mid-December. And then also leave a comment on what you think about this topic in general. But without further ado, let's get into it and start with one of our favorite leftists. And don't worry, we will be getting to the Liberal Party and the NDP too, not just going after nutcase activists. But let's start off with our favorite former global news journalist and pink slip collector, Rachel Gilmore, who said in the aftermath of the strikes, just watch Netanyahu praise the US strikes as a victory for quote unquote civilization, which is just so effing racist. My God. How is it racist? How is going after the Iranian nuclear program racist? How is praising it as a win for civilization racist? By the way, the Iranian people, the Persian population of Iran, doesn't like the Islamic theocracy that is currently ruling them. But apparently it's racist to actually want terrorists not to get nuclear weapons. But here is somebody's response to her, a journalist from Montreal named Natasha Montreal, who says, Rach comes out swinging for the IRGC nuclear program. The mullahs blind women with acid for refusing to cover their hair. This despotic regime has plunged its own into poverty. Political opponents are imprisoned and tortured. No S, it's barbaric, you dingbat. And she says in response, Rachel Gilmore, in response to Natasha Montreal, says, creating a dichotomy of the civilized and the barbaric is an act of racist dehumanization that can be a precursor to genocide and other mass atrocity. Read an effing book, Natasha. If you did read a book, you would only conclude that Rachel Gilmore was extremely stupid. It's just idiobabble coming out of Rachel Gilmore. Oh, to even put a value judgment on the Iranian government as being uncivilized and barbaric is somehow racist, and it's leading to dehumanization that is a precursor for genocide or other atrocities. No, this is not like the Nazi regime or the Turkish government trying to dehumanize Jews or Armenians, or like like other groups trying to dehumanize others so that they can basically justify killing them. That's not what happened here. Israel and the United States basically killed nobody. They went after the heads of the Iranian military who are involved in training and funding terrorists around the Middle East and around the world in general. The Houthis in Yemen, Hamas in Gaza, you have the Hezbollah in Lebanon. This is a terror state, and they killed maybe 300 people who were connected with the regime, whether it's from the military side or the nuclear weapons program side, and they were obviously trying to build a nuclear weapon. Uranium enrichment is only required to be 3% for civilian power. And for medical purposes, you only need uranium enrichment to be at 6%. The Islamic Republic of Iran was at 60% enrichment. That is only to get a nuclear weapon. There was no legitimate purpose. No, there's no legitimate reason to be at 60% unless you're making a nuclear weapon. And it's fantastic that Donald Trump pulled the trigger and hit the nuclear facility below that mountain. I forget what the actual mountain was called. They hit it with a bunch of massive bombs going through the ventilation shaft and destroyed the entire thing. The US military did a fantastic job, and I'm happy they did it. But if you're Rachel Gilmore, it's very bad, because to even go after the Iranian regime is to delegitimize them. And she lives in such a morally relativistic world that she actually cares about the feelings of the Iranian mullahs, who are both oppressing their own people and would love to set off a nuclear bomb in any state that they don't like, to simply take as many people out in the world with them, because they would not live very long after setting off a bomb. But because their ideology is martyrdom, they would totally do it. But sorry, guys, we have more Rachel Gilmore to talk about. This is a video that she posted very recently, responding to what had gone on, talking about the press conference that Donald Trump had put on in the aftermath of the very successful operation. Check this out.
With everything happening in Iran, you might be feeling scared, overwhelmed, and confused. But I got you. I'm a journalist, and I spent the last few days researching.
She's not a journalist, guys. She's just not a journalist. What is this to? Who's scared? Is this video made for Ayatollah Khamenei? Is he scared sitting in his bunker right now? I guess she made this for him and the other Islamo-fascists who currently live in Iran. Most Iranian people probably don't care because they don't like the government. Who's scared? Some Portland city councilor, some Victoria city councilor needed this video to be made as a safety blanket because they're very concerned that terrorists are dying.
Reading and talking to experts about this situation. And what I learned blew my mind in several ways that you've really got to hear about.
Dude, she probably had her mind blown by the existence of microwave popcorn. No, you did not have your mind blown. You had your biases confirmed. She would have her mind blown by 1 + 1 = 2 and not 3.
There are 3 big questions I'm going to answer for you in this video. First, what's the deal with Iran's nuclear program, and did the US attack accomplish anything? Next, we'll talk about some analysis of why this might have happened and what Israel or the US might have been thinking. And then
they don't want a terror state that funds terrorism everywhere to have a nuclear weapon. It's not that hard.
And finally, we'll talk about what could happen next. And this is
nothing happened. The Islamic Republic knows that it can't strike back and has literally coordinated attacks with the US where they're going to fire a few missiles at them that the US easily shoots down, so they get to pretend they're fighting back.
Where things kind of make my blood run cold, but not necessarily in the way that you'd expect. I'd like to give a special thank you to Dr. Besma Momani, a professor of political science at the University of Waterloo, who I peppered with a million questions earlier today. She is an award-winning academic who has written or collaborated on more than 14 books, and she's an expert on Middle East politics. Okay, let's dive in. We were all stunned and, let's be honest, freaked out when we heard this announcement on Saturday night.
We were freaked out that the Islamic regime was not going to have nuclear weapons. Wow, that's news to me. I knew people only celebrating. Yeah, there were some idiots, both on the left and the right, who were saying, this is terrible, it's going to lead to World War III. No, it's not. It is just not. The Islamic regime is a tin pot dictatorship trying to get weapons of mass destruction. The only way there's going to be World War III is if they have the equipment to fight it. You have to just deny them the equipment and nothing will happen.
The strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
So let's start with a huge question, because Prime Minister Mark Carney put out a statement calling Iran's nuclear program a, quote, grave threat to international security.
He's right. The rest of his statement's ridiculous, which we'll be getting to later, but he is right. Even the UN body that studies basically goes around and checks on different nuclear programs, like the watchdog, I guess, they're usually very soft on Iran. Even they agreed that Iran was enriching uranium, obviously, to get a nuclear weapon.
And said U.S. military action was, quote, designed to alleviate that threat. But was that threat real? Doesn't really sound like it. A key ingredient for nukes is enriched uranium. But there are also non-military reasons to enrich uranium, like for nuclear power.
You only need 3% enrichment for that. They had 60.
You enrich uranium in a machine called a centrifuge, and it takes a really, really long time. Now, the degree to which you need to enrich uranium for civilian purposes is really low. We're talking like 2 to 4%, around that range. To use it in like a nuclear bomb, you have to enrich it to 90%. But Iran has been enriching uranium to 60%.
Wow. Well, I guess it doesn't mean anything then. They were at 60%. Wow. That's fine. They're only literally 20 times higher than what they need for civilian use, and they're only 50% away from getting to the 90% they need for the nuclear weapon. I wonder what they were doing. Who could? What do you guys think? What do you think that they were trying to do? I can't figure it out. Maybe they just developed a new type of nuclear facility for power for civilians that requires it to be at 60%. Maybe that's what was going on there. Maybe it was just a newfangled way of being able to heat people's homes, even though it is a natural and a gas and oil and gas superpower, and they can easily meet all of their energy needs themselves through their own oil and gas industry. It is patently absurd that they were trying to just build something for nuclear power. They just really care about climate change, guys.
And something happens when you're enriching uranium and you hit 60%. The time it takes to get from 60% to 90% is way shorter than how long it takes to get to that initial 60%. Like Besma told me, we're talking years for that first chunk, and then with everything.
So yeah. So everyone was absolutely correct. And that was when her video cut off. Maybe she uploaded part 2 somewhere else. It doesn't matter. The whole thing goes into justifying, basically sidestepping the idea that the Iranian government was doing it. I believe from someone telling me, basically Rachel Gilmore went on to claim, well, they could have easily gotten to 90% by now, but they hadn't yet. So that maybe they weren't trying to develop it because they could have done it and they didn't. They will absolutely do it. The whole point is you can keep it at 60. You can ramp up to 90 when you have everything together to make the weapon. There's other components that are required. You don't just get it to 90 and then huck it like a football. You need to do other things. But this is the kind of, I would say, obvious cluelessness of people on the left, of people pretending to not know what's going on here. Here is one of our favorites, Laura Babcock, reacting also to the press conference with Donald Trump. She quote-tweeted this person named Dawn Winslow, says, "4 morons, they look like a Saturday Night Live skit." Yeah, a Saturday Night Live skit that prevented a terror regime from getting a nuclear weapon. And Laura Babcock says Obama could do this alone. Except he couldn't because he was letting the Iranians develop nuclear weapons. He didn't care. He wouldn't let Israel strike them. He would never strike them for doing it. He signed the JCPOA, the ridiculous Iran nuclear agreement that Donald Trump rightfully tore up when he first got into office as president in his first term in 2017. And now he has fully ended it by just hitting them with a bunch of bunker buster bombs so that they can't use those facilities under mountains anymore. Perfect. Good. These people are, again, it's learned cluelessness. These people know better, but they have learned to be clueless for partisan reasons. Laura Babcock reacting to another big lefty account on social media, Roddy. Roddy says, if you believe that Trump has gotten Israel and Iran to agree to a ceasefire, you're an idiot. And Laura Babcock says, I may have alluded the same to somebody. And yeah, technically Israel and Iran are still attacking each other post ceasefire. Iran broke it first, then Israel fired back. But yeah, that's not really, I don't think that this is like, again, they're just nitpicking things going on with, they're just like nitpicking everything about the operation because they got nothing. Here is Roddy also saying, choke on it, America, in response to this account saying, U.S. military now briefing troops that its strike on Iran will, quote, likely result in counterstrikes on U.S. bases and facilities, quote, unquote, in the Middle East and, quote, likely activate Iran and other foreign terrorist organizations cells abroad, including in the U.S., to conduct strikes against, it says, U.S. Citizens and facilities, it goes on to say. And into that, to the Iranian terror regime threatening the United States and the West in the aftermath of people rightfully taking away their nuclear weapons program, he says, choke on it. These people are absolutely insane. Here's Roddy saying this, when we're about to get to the mainstream parties in Canada responding. Roddy says, this time it's different. This time the U.S. wasn't attacked. This time the U.S. was the attacker. Okay. I don't care that they're the attacker. They're attacking for the right reasons. It's a preemptive strike, again, against a terrorist funding regime that also engages in terrorism directly itself. They are the biggest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. Again, they back the Houthis, they back Hamas, they back Hezbollah, they back many other terror regimes around the world. I am fine with them being struck at. We're not allowed to strike bad people when they're doing bad things and they're threatening the lives of other people. They're threatening peace. You're allowed to attack people if they would then start up a wider war. And again, the mullahs in Iran do not care about their own lives. They will fire off a nuke for the purpose of killing as many Jews, Christians, or Westerners as possible. They don't care if they die. They just want to go out. They just want to go out with as many casualties on the other side as possible. This is not like Kim Jong-un in North Korea, whose goal in life is to die happily in his sleep and will never set off a nuke. He just has it so that nobody will get rid of him. In Iran, the mullahs are perfectly fine going out in flames. That's why they cannot have a nuclear weapon. North Korea shouldn't have one either, but they already do, and it's less of a crisis because of the motivations of North Korea. Here's Christio Avalis, who is an NDP shill on X, and also the NDP retweeted his post here, which is absolutely insane. Christino says the NDP statements on Trump's war of aggression against Iran, much better than the one from Trump stooge Carney. And by the way, Carney was also snidely taking jabs at the United States as well. We'll be getting back to that, but that wasn't even good enough for the United States. And I love that he actually says this is a war of aggression against Iran. There's no war. It was strikes. But here is the statement from the NDP party that is rightfully only at 7 seats right now. I wish it was 0. NDP statement on U.S. attack on Iran. NDP critic for foreign affairs and defense Heather McPherson, who is an absolute nutcase. She's never found a terrorist regime she will not apologize for. Heather McPherson issued the following statement. Quote, on June 17th, New Democrats released a statement calling on Mark Carney to push for a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. We expressed our urgent concern that Trump would soon join this war and escalate a terrifying situation further. By the way, guys, easiest way of telling if someone's a complete dullard on foreign policy, they talk about escalation and de-escalation, because apparently that is the only thing that you need to understand about any conflict. Who's escalating and who's de-escalating? I don't care who's escalating, de-escalating. I care who's in the right and who's in the wrong. But she goes on to say, last night Trump indeed attacked Iran, a use of force that is illegal under both U.S. and international law. No, it's not illegal under U.S. law for the president to use the military to strike when an opportunity is present to prevent another conflict from occurring or to go after enemies of the United States. He can do that. If it's a full-on total war, he has to get congressional approval. For stuff like this, he obviously does not, or else you would never be able to take opportunities like this because you would be too busy debating it in Congress, and your enemies would know that you're coming because you're debating it on the House floor. And then she goes on to say, New Democrats condemn this action by Trump and call for immediate de-escalation and a return of all parties to diplomatic talks. Oh yes, the very sage and wise opinion that we should talk about things all the time and let the bad guys keep doing whatever they're going to do behind the scenes. There is no military solution to this crisis. There was, and Trump just did it. Once again, we reiterate that millions of people, including Canadians, trapped in the region will pay the price for the actions of these warmongers. And the warmongers, because Heather McPherson is a nutcase and also seems to take any opportunity to attack Israel as she can, is calling the warmongers in this case are Israel and the United States, not Iran, who again funds terrorism and has killed hundreds of thousands to millions of people around the region over the decades that the Islamic regime has been in power in Iran. No, the warmongers are the people who killed 300 people intimately attached to the nuclear program in Iran and the military that, again, trains terrorists all over the Middle East to kill people, try and topple other governments and do stuff like that. Oh, okay, so that was them. And now let's get to Mr. Mark Carney, and then we will cycle back to some of the other activists. This is a long video, but purposely so. And he says, return immediately to the negotiating table. Mark Carney on Iranian strike. Let's get to Mark Carney's specific statement on this, because this thing was stupid. Iran's nuclear program is a grave threat to international security, and Canada has been consistently clear that Iran can never be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon. While U.S. military actions taken last night was designed to alleviate that threat, the situation in the Middle East remains highly volatile. Stability in the region is a priority. So even that sentence, he's already saying, while the U.S. military action taken last night was designed to alleviate that threat, he then sideswipes them and says, there's still tensions going on. Hey, the U.S. didn't create world peace and cure cancer. Ergo, the strikes aren't 100% effective. Even though that's not the point. Oh, is there tension? Okay, sure, but Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, so that's good. And now he finishes this statement off saying, Canada calls on parties to return immediately to the negotiating table and reach a diplomatic solution to end this crisis. As G7 leaders agreed in Kananaskis, the resolution of the Iranian crisis should lead to a broader de-escalation of hostilities in the Middle East, including a ceasefire in Gaza. Why is he bringing up Gaza? What does this have to do with Gaza at all? It doesn't have to do anything. He just knows there are nutcase progressives in his party who hate Israel to the point that they will blame Israel for Iran, a terror state, developing a nuclear weapon over the last 20 years. It's mostly been Israel having to stop them here and there, hold back their nuclear program from getting off the ground or moving fast. Iran's been doing this no matter what's been going on in Gaza. And Gaza is being run by terrorists who fire constant rockets into Israel. Of course, Israel, after October 7th, went in to decapitate the Hamas leadership and are trying to basically control the situation now. He only brought that up, again, because there are nutcases, Muslim Brotherhood operatives and whatnot who exist in the Liberal Party who require the Liberals to sound off about how, all of this is kind of Israel's fault if you think about it. Them responding to thousands of their people being killed, kidnapped, or wounded is actually their fault. They should have just brushed it aside and let Yahya Sinwar keep on living. Yeah, these people suck. Let's move on to some other things that have been said by Marcus J. Carney. I want to get to this one. So this is what Carney said at the EU yesterday, which is a very insulting statement that seems to act like the U.S. is somehow not maybe in the wrong in this situation, but the U.S., we need to move past the United States as a leader in the world.
So we're meeting now in that context as you just said, in hard times. We might say even a hinge moment of history, a world that's more dangerous and divided, a time where the rules-based international, the global order, rules-based global order is under threat, in a time when technological change is accelerating. And we really have two choices as a jurisdiction, as a country in this circumstance. We can nostalgically look back and long for the old order to somehow return, or we can build a new one with purpose and partnership.
Sorry to rain on Mark Carney's parade here, but the old order just blew the new order out of the water. Donald Trump and Israel taking out Iran's nuclear program was fantastic. That was the old American order asserting itself and proving it's still the biggest bully on the block, which is a good thing. I don't want to live in a world where Russia, Iran, China, dictators around the world feel like they can do absolutely anything they want. That doesn't mean that we should have the U.S. going around toppling anyone who is a nasty person. You'd have to topple probably like 100+ countries. It's that what we wanted to do is keep it at a dull roar and make sure that somebody like President Donald Trump has the ability to basically say, walk into the kitchen when the kids are acting up, all the rogue regimes are acting up, to say, hey, what's going on here? And everyone shuts up a little bit because, dad might actually, dad might punish you if you keep messing around and making a mess. If you keep hitting your brother, he's going to come and smack you. I like that because it's a good thing for the world. It's a good thing for general peace.
And as the most European of the non-European countries, Canada looks first to the European Union to build a better world.
And that was the other shoe that dropped in that speech. Canada looks to the European Union to build a better world. The European Union is worthless. So many EU countries are economic basket cases. They let millions of migrants into their country. They don't control street crime. They are letting crimes be committed by migrants because they're scared of being accused of being racist, like when it comes to the Pakistani grooming gangs in the United Kingdom. We shouldn't look to these people. I know the UK isn't part of the EU anymore, but I'm just talking about Europe in general. If we're maybe talking about Italy or Poland, I wouldn't mind Canada emulating them a little bit more when it comes to some policies. But Canada is rightfully more like the United States than we are like Europe. If we were more like Europe, we would be even in a bigger hole than we already are. Everything going wrong with Canada right now is because of our European-like positions on policy. And Canada has, again, the anti-American tendency that when we do something European because we don't want to be like the Americans, we turn it up to 11, like with our MAID program, like with Safe Supply, like with the homeless encampment crisis. We tend to go to the nth degree. It's why Tristan Hopper ended up writing that book, Don't Be Like Canada, How Canada Did Everything Wrong All at Once. Really good book. You guys should go check that out. I'll maybe try and bring him on to do a book review on it. But no, I don't want to be like Europe. And this is kind of a big way of Carney messing up the negotiations with America over trade, to basically say, we don't really like you guys. We don't like how you're handling the Iran situation. We actually like Europe better. Those useless people who aren't doing anything about the Middle East, who are borderline not even keeping commitments to NATO spending, who've been letting the US quarterback the Ukraine situation. Yeah, let's be more like those useless idiots. But here is another guy commenting on Mark Carney yesterday, Mike Gerald Gibbs, he, him, who says, "This is my favorite picture of the G7. Mark Carney is the most skillful diplomat Canada has ever produced since Lester Pearson. The Carney charm is something to behold. He connects with people immediately. Carney had the South African president beaming with joy and laughter." If there was a world leader who's sort of in the Western orbit, who I would not want our leader to get along with, it's that scumbag. That guy who doesn't care that mobs of people are going around just murdering white farmers in Africa. I think that he should be basically called on the carpet and ripped like Trump ripped him when he visited the Oval Office and he confronted him over his party enabling these crimes occurring. And he basically had this pathetic defense. I forget what the man's name is, but he had this pathetic defense that, well, crime's a big problem in general. There's crime everywhere. Okay, but there is a disproportionate amount of farmers who are white being murdered in Africa. And we're not talking about like a little disproportionate. We're talking about like roving bands of people trying to find opportunities to kill white farmers. And they also kill black farmers too, often assuming it's a white farm showing up. It's not, because they're scumbags. They shoot that guy in the head anyways and just take all of his stuff and ransack it. And he signed a piece of legislation into law, basically allowing the government to take your property and redistribute it to the people, because the needs of the state become before the individual. The man is a socialist nutbag. I don't want Mark Carney to get along with that guy, but he is getting along with him because he has no standards. He's just some anti-Western leader that we're going to suck up to. Oh my goodness. Okay. I just want to comment on this video by Laura Babcock because I like to comment on her whenever I get the opportunity. Maybe we'll end off with this. There was other statements by other liberal MPs and ministers saying, "Oh, we need de-escalation in the United States." It's pathetic. It's stupid. But that's pretty much it. We're in not a great position with the U.S. because we are criticizing them doing the obvious right thing. But here is Laura Babcock, again, screaming about the U.S. I'm not sure if this exactly has to do with Iran, but I always find her videos funny.
We are globally impacted by what's happening with the move to fascism in the United States. We cannot separate our media from what we're seeing down there. And too much of our corporate media is owned by the US. We have to have.
Well, I don't know why she's jump cutting so much, but like, I love this constant fear mongering about the fascism in the United States. What fascism in the United States? The Republicans are a small government party mostly. Why? How are, yes, the fascists are free market. That Laura Babcock's onto something.
A rapid response to it immediately of pro-democratic voices leveraging and amplifying one another on social media.
We do outnumber them. So let's use our numbers. Always answer fire with fire, like just be there.
These people are delusional. They don't live on planet Earth with the rest of us. That's why Laura Babcock was also going around agreeing with people that, oh, it's so bad that the US went after Iran for developing nuclear weapons. No, it's actually very good that they did that. And you would have to be a complete moron to think otherwise. And now like the left, I like seeing the left finally realize a bunch of people on their side might not like Jewish people very much, because all of them are based, like there's this one guy, I forget, Yves Engels or something like that. He's some Montreal-based anti-Israel activist going around saying, well, why aren't the left criticizing Jewish people enough because they're the ones enabling this? And a bunch of people on the left suddenly realized maybe we've been enabling this kind of socialist style of anti-Semitism way too much. But even there, they're frozen and unable to do anything about it because they live in a morally relative world that, because Iran is poor and because Gaza is poor and because Syria is poor and because Yemen is poor, the Hezbollah side of it, that means Israel's bad because they're rich, even though they didn't take anything from these people. They live on a small spit of land and have turned it into an actual functional Western democracy that has a good economy and good, social structure. Because the other people weren't able to do that, apparently Israel's very bad. And this is the same narrative that needs to be pushed back on in Canada, that because some people in Canada are poor and some people have money, that means someone ripped off the other person. Now, there is bad things that happen in Canada's economy, mostly through government subsidization, propping up bad industries, overtaxing people, overregulating others, signing away people's land over to corrupt band councils. Bad stuff happens. But the funny thing is, all the things that actually make the economy unfair are the things that the socialist left advocates for in order to correct perceived issues around income inequality. Like maybe this is the last thing I'm going to end on. This was one of the dumbest things I've seen. I don't need to make a video on this. It's just not worth it. But that guy I made a response video to the other day, Steve Boots, had made this insane video in the context of how bad Canada's economy is and how normal people can't get ahead. He made this video entitled, drumroll please, Canada's real problem, wealth inequality. Yeah, Canada's real problem is wealth inequality. Not the fact that per capita incomes keep going down because of mass immigration, high taxes and regulations holding down business growth. It's income inequality. We just need to tax and regulate harder, and then we will eventually arrive in some sort of like grand socialist like economy where everyone is, at least somewhat equal. No, I don't want equality. I want people getting what they deserve. Anyways, so that's it for me today, guys. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, do all that great stuff. Actually, I probably do have another video coming out today, but it's a force of habit. I say that's it for me today. I watch another channel where someone always says that because he only releases one video every other day or so. And so I say it, even though I often will put out 2 videos in a day. But get off my back, man. Get off my back. Anyways, see you guys later.